living word.
I'd like to call this meeting back to
Probably
order.
put the gun on it. We may have, should have waited.
All right, everybody?
Yep. I don't know.
Nelson's next.
Yeah, well, she's gonna have fun. That's what.
We are on item number 7, Head Start. Item A, Head Start Board Liaison Report, Appendix A. Nelson Boyer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, I'm just going to briefly go ahead and share Appendix A and B with you as required. I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Smiles. She wants to tell you some things about some of the work that her and her team are doing, and we are in the middle of our grant approval process, so she's going to take us through that. But as required, Appendix A, if you'll look, you can see the same enrollment, funded enrollment as last month, 260 enrolled students. That's 113 3-year-olds and 147 4-year-olds. Appendix B. And again, I always remind our board that Head Start is a month behind, and so the numbers look a little bit off, but you can see there we are on track to meet all of our financial and spending goals. So if there are no questions, I will turn it over to Ms. Smiles.
I do have a brief question, but probably Ms. Miles can answer this. In regards to the dropouts, is there a process that we follow when a student decides to drop out?
Yes, there is a process. As we all know that there is an application process to be qualified as a child enrolled in our program, and there's also a dropout withdrawal forms, and there's a paper trail that we have to abide by for the federal government. So yes.
Thank you.
So
If it's federal, there's a form for it.
Yeah.
Mhm. So what we do is we combine multiple programs, state and federal and local, and we go with the most stringent policy per the funding source. So we can deliver those comprehensive services. But thank you, Mr. Boyer. So a big shout out with preschool registration right around the corner. I wanted to let everybody know that we have purple flyers out in our audience and for our board members as well. So we start our kickoff February 3rd. So if we have a little one that's 3 and 4, on or before August 31st, come to our office at Dale Spencer Building, our Johnson Pre-K Center. On another note, Mr. Boyer is correct. We're up for our renewal grant application. So enclosed, you have Appendix C. So with saying that, we are thrilled to be having our Focus One review call for a week-long starting the week of January 21st. And this is our first process, new process for our federal review. So we are in grant year 1, getting ready to finish that out by April 30th and start a grant cycle 2 starting May 1st, 2020. So with saying that, this is our first review for our new cycle of our grant. And we will be entering a series of phone calls at Johnson Pre-K Center, as well as with Dr. Smith and her team and Lisa Eastep as our board chairperson, and our parents of program governance. So there's a series that we're preparing for we feel very confident and excited to share the opportunities that we're doing here with New Hanover County School children. So wanted to shout that out as well. So looking at our Appendix C, we have before you renewal cycle of our continuation grant that starts effective May 1, 2020. And so we need this to be approved. It's an action item, and you have your total budgets before you. Including in that budget is a TA, which is $26,843, which is PA 20, so that's embedded in your direct services. You have indirect costs and your required federal share amounts. We have required supporting documentations, as you see 1 through 7. So please let me know if you have any questions about those, and I'd be available to answer those questions for you. If we may look at the last, or the second to last item, which is your budget categories, that I submit through our HSES online system that's mandated, and it's due February 1 after we have an approval tonight. So with looking at that, it's the budget categories, and it just really highlights and demonstrates that our grant funds, between 92 and 95% are for salaries and fringe. So that breaks it down. In the middle of that line item, we have training and technical assistance, which was the amount of money that is for PA20 cost, different from your operation costs, what I brought to your attention earlier. So that just kind of, it's important to know with our Head Start budget that we have the flexibility to amend those items if they're not in equipment. So we have flexibility within to see fit as our needs change throughout the year. And then the last document is assurances, which will come from Mrs. Lisa Eastep. So if there aren't any questions regarding our supporting documentation, looks pretty similar to last year's updated goals and progress as mandated by the grant application.
So you're looking for a motion to approve the budget, correct?
Yes, sir.
Is there a motion to approve Appendix C?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Excellent. We look forward to working in partnership serving these children. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Item number 8, old business, item A, the 2020-2021 calendars, Appendix D. Dr. Smith?
Yes, would ask the board's approval of the traditional school calendar for the 2020-21 school year, as well as the pre-K calendar for the 2020-2021 school year, the Isaac Bear calendar for the 2020-21 school year, the WEX calendar for the 2020-2021 school year, and then the CTEC calendar for the 2020-2021 school year as presented in the item.
Is there a motion to approve the calendars as listed?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Please note that this would be what you consider a traditional calendar for the majority of our schools. And we will make a recommendation next year unless there's a significant change in the law that allows us to, or some kind of compromise that allows us to meet what we think is important in terms of alignment with community college calendars. We will be bringing back the other proposal for a year-round calendar.
Okay, great. But that's going to be with a lot more input from these various groups that before, I guess, did not feel that they had the input. That'll be next year's calendar committee.
Our process has been open. Our meetings are always open. A lot of folks provided input. We will post our meetings. They're welcome to come to those meetings. We'll continue the discussions with the groups that we've had.
Now, next year's calendar committee, I know maybe it's a little ahead of time, but will we be inviting some people from the business community on it more so than we have now? So we can, I guess it's a little early to talk about the makeup of the committee.
Traditionally, the calendar committee has invited community members. It's invited parents, teachers, teacher of the year usually, board representation. So I would assume that we will continue doing that. And if we,
And possibly then including businesses.
possibly, yes.
That's next year's, okay.
I think it's important that we understand what the tourism community's pain points are. Because if we're moving to a year-round, modified year-round model, understanding their pain points, maybe there's ways we can help support throughout this year to help them prepare
Right.
for that change.
And their concept of win-win, I think, is an excellent concept that we should also embrace.
I think we all want the win-win. We just, unfortunately, the way the law is currently constructed, it doesn't provide for that.
Well, we don't know that yet. That's the whole point.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number B, mental health first aid training, Appendix 5 has my name after it. This is an item that we discussed in November, I believe, and it was mental health first aid training that was the recommendation of the First Aid Task Force. And we have with us again Judge Corpening, Kathy Stoop from the county, and Lynn from Trillium, Lynn from Trillium. And if you all would like to come up and speak about the training again, just to remind our audience.
So briefly, youth mental health first aid training is offered by Trillium free of charge to school districts and to others. They provide the materials, they provide the trainers. The idea is to be able to recognize when our students are in a mental health crisis, whether it's the beginning of a crisis or whether it's something more serious that needs intervention where there are perhaps suicidal ideations, and to train staff to recognize those signs and then be able to connect that student to the resources that are needed. We've been working on this for a while, and we feel like with suicide being the second leading cause of teenage deaths in America, it's time to take a stand and to do something about it, and to equip not just our teachers, but our staff, our cafeteria staff, our bus drivers, to recognize the signs of mental health distress and to know how to respond. They're not going to become psychologists. Mm-hmm. It's an 8-hour training, but it's an excellent training. I'll tell you that all the teachers in New Hanover that have taken it have reported back on their evaluations that everyone should have it. Mm-hmm. Some of our Laney staff have taken it. Our student support services folks have had it. But I've come as chair of the Community Child Protection Team. I have to make an annual report to the county about gaps of services that affect child welfare in our community. For the last 3 years, this has been a gap that I've reported to the commissioners. We're looking at closing that gap, and appreciate your time. Lynn is here from Trillium if you've got other questions about what the curriculum actually looks like. We made our big pitch in November. I try not to pitch twice. So if you've got questions of Lynn or if Kathy from the county, we're glad to answer questions.
Now, the feedback, as you said, has been excellent. The folks who get the training, it is phenomenal. This is another area where our school calendar is limiting what we can do to try to get that training. But I know we're the district committee to try to make this happen.
And so I'll add that Trillium has great flexibility in terms of how to deliver that training to meet your calendaring needs, whether it's, as the question was asked in November, can you train 4,000 employees in a year? The answer would be yes, we'd find a way. Okay?
So just, I think,
if the answer is 500 a year, we can do that too, because Trillium is making this a priority. And so we've been communicating through the county with Trillium, and so they'll be able to meet your calendar issues in terms of availability. We recognize that. We just feel it's important to get started and make a significant step forward on this issue.
So if there aren't any other questions, what I'd like to ask for is a vote to support this training initiative, and then let the board get out of the way and let staff go ahead and get started working with Trillium on getting this initiative going.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Second?
All right, any further discussion?
Well, just I think I expressed it last time. I've gone through the training. It's invaluable. I totally agree. I think our kids need it. Our teachers need it. Our staff, all the staff needs it.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It is approved. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Being Judge Court. And Trillium.
Item number 9, information. Item A, leadership visit to Apple Appendix T. It has my name on it, but what I would like to do is turn it over to the organizer of the trip, who is Miss Natalie English from the Chamber, and I would like to thank her for being here. So, Ms. English?
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the school board. I'm not only the CEO of the Wilmington Chamber of Commerce, but I'm also the proud parent of a sophomore back-to-back JV football conference championship team at Hoggard High School. I told him I would mention that, so he'll be excited to see it in the recording. But I'm here tonight to talk to you about an awesome opportunity for our community to spend some time as a delegation representing the key organizations in our community who care about workforce and the future of our community. That's what this is about. It's about making sure that we're creating a pipeline to develop the talent that our current employers and our future employers will want to hire. And we're really excited about the opportunity that Apple has afforded us to come out and do that. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
How are they going to do that?
They facilitate a day on their campus, sharing with us, well, first they listen to us, talk about how we see the state of education at all levels in our community. And then they facilitate conversations through sharing with us the innovations and the technologies that they're seeing used in other communities. And then they give us a look forward, and we're going to get a little sneak peek into what the future of technology is going to be. And then they allow us some time to talk about what are the partnerships that we might need to build upon or to create back home when we get back home. And so we'll come back and engage all of you, all of the county commissioners. The city council will even probably be asked to engage. The chamber membership, you name it, across the board, this community needs to get behind. You've heard many speakers talk about that tonight, that our community needs to get really strongly behind what you all do every day. And the rest of the community wants to be a part of improving education for all our kids at every level. Again, this is not only about K-12. Our university will be represented, and our community college will be represented.
All right, so this is Apple that is asking you to come out, or you're accepting an invitation.
Yes, ma'am.
So it's their products they're going to be introducing. I've already heard from board members that are considering going, or that have accepted going, that we have many Apple products that we use. We also have many other products also. There are also many other companies that have this kind of knowledge base that they could share with us. Why would it be why is it that Apple, that it would be okay to accept their invitation? Does that mean further down the line that we should be buying their products, or using the products that we have now to even maybe engage in possibly buying? I don't know what else to say. It sounds to me like they're selling something.
Well, let me correct that perception. We won't be hearing about any Apple products. We won't be hearing about any Apple products. We will be talking about technology in a broader perspective. They will be sharing with us innovations that are much broader than their products. I would say if Microsoft called tomorrow and offered a similar opportunity, we certainly should go. We should take every opportunity the private sector is willing to offer us to be good partners in developing a better education system in our country.
Okay, speaking of technology, why could they not share this information locally through, say, something like Skype or computer, interfacing? Why do we have to take all these people out there? And we're talking about 2 of our employees that are valuable employees. We're talking about 2 board members that, even though their time is very valuable and they're going to be very knowledgeable when they come back, why can't we be doing this, using that technology to spread the knowledge here to even almost a greater base? Because those 4 people wouldn't be the only ones setting in on it if they were sharing that information locally here via distance opportunities.
I would say there's tremendous value in getting off-site and eliminating distractions when you're having a conversation that's this important.
Okay, that's an opinion. Now, I thought that the technology was the point of the whole thing, was how students focus and use that for their possibilities for entrepreneurship, for learning in the classroom, for not just entrepreneurship, but work in the future, because our society is changing so much. That's your opinion about getting off-site, but to me, this is my personal take, having been in education for many years and seeing the changes in technology, living with young people who, actually my son's a software designer, that actually use what you're considering looking at. We could have somebody come here, or we here could be using our resources to have even more people get this information. Getting off-site, to me, now, especially nowadays, more and more, there are distance workers. People are learning from a distance. That's the wave of the future. Why should we take the old-fashioned route when you're promoting a popular, futuristic way of looking at it? To me, this just seems contradictory, and it also seems like we're not utilizing our talents that we're sharing.
So then let me clarify again, the purpose is not to learn about technology that we can use in the classroom. The purpose of the trip is that we learn about innovations and the way technology may be being used in other classrooms, and to facilitate our coming together and having a community conversation on a small scale, because it's hard to do something like this on a large scale, and then we bring that back and share with you the innovations that we've heard about, and to make proposals that could make a very positive difference in the way we are developing our workforce from cradle to career.
Well, I'm saying, why don't we just bring it here from an outside distance? Why do we have to physically move our bodies, or the bodies of these 4 people that we're sending over there, when we could actually have them, via many different forms, bring that information here and share it with more than just those 4 people? Why, to me, I thought technology was the point.
Because then I think you have access to Apple's entire brain trust. Whoever we are exposed to, we can ask questions of. We don't, I mean, technology is great, but it's also somewhat limiting. They can't open up windows into every office, into everyone that we could possibly ask questions of, unless you're there. I mean, that's why people fly, to get to those meetings. I mean, you do have, and I'm sure we could Skype in after this initial meeting if we have follow-up questions. But there are still people that fly around the world for business meetings. So that, to me, is the purpose. Dawn, do you want to talk a little bit about how we use, our iPads and our devices now?
Right now in the district, we do have iPads, but we also have Windows devices. So we have an assortment of devices, because later on you're going to be proving a Microsoft contract for me. So we have a variety of devices. Historically, we've had iMacs and stuff at the elementary schools. We had issues with the cost, and this was pre-Y2K cost, trying to get them updated and stuff. And so we kind of focused more on the Microsoft side, because it was easier to manage and more cost effective. When the iPads came out 10 years ago, it was something we looked at, and we have then embraced those, brought those into the district. They are used in a variety of ways. One goal that I have is starting to get kids to, instead of just consuming information, but producing information. So I'm actually working on a project now with 3 schools, actually with Apple. They do coaching and training for our teachers. It isn't just about the Apple products, because teachers are also using Google and other things as well. But it is Apple who's come, because they do have good staff development that I've contracted with them to provide the coaching and the training for our teachers. But our teachers do use the iPads on a regular basis. Students are using them on a regular basis. Our goal is to get them to using them more for, like I said, for creating instead of consuming.
Well, that's wonderful, but to me, it just seems almost contradictory that you're taking an old-fashioned trip. To me, it also sounds like sales in the long run, because why else would they be offering this opportunity? They're not doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. It just makes no sense. Or to do their civic duty, or a tax write-off, possibly. But it sounds like a sales trip in the long run, because they're going to be convincing and schmoozing and making you feel good, but that could be happening long distance from them, and we could possibly even expose more people to their information using technology instead of taking just 4 people.
And that's one view, but I'll use this example. I used to work at Castle Branch, who Mr. Finley is, the founder of, and we had students come to Castle Branch. And when students came to Castle Branch, they got to tour the facility, they got to talk to employees, they got to find out what types of skills were needed for the job, and they could envision themselves doing something within those types of roles. So there is a reason that our educators go to conferences. They get to share a lot of different ideas and knowledge base with people from different places. I understand that this is a lot of people going across the country, but there is value in seeing it, and I'm sure the Apple headquarters is going to be incredible, and it's going to give our leaders hopefully something to aspire to from an innovation standpoint, is my hope for this.
And I liked what you said about conferences. The idea is to have other, not just Apple, but other, if there was a conference situation where you had other technology groups also offering opportunity, that would be a wonderful situation. But this is a one particular group. To me, it seems very much like a sales pitch. Fly them out there, woo them, and then down the line, more is going to happen. This is just practical, real-world facts. If you think this is a mystery, it's not. They're not doing this out of the kindness of their hearts. So, you know, if we're going to expend this kind of energy using our personnel, my goodness, do it in a more holistic way instead of this one company that's trying to sell us something. I think it's a great idea to get access to more knowledge. But there's other ways that we get information that work perfectly well without us flying. And, you know, the specific people, they're going to come back, they're going to share. They're great people, but they can do it without flying out there and doing it. And without having the concept of the wooing that, in my opinion, is going to go on.
Ms. Justice, as a longtime advocate for business, I get paid to advocate on behalf of business, and I'm passionate about it because business is where jobs are, right? So it's where prosperity is. I have to tell you that companies like Apple, Castle Branch, you name it, that Live Oak Bank, they do things out of the goodness of their heart because they understand that improving education, that improving our community means everybody gets better. And it means, yep, the bottom line for them grows. They are not selling products to us on this trip. They are encouraging us to embrace some innovations that we have yet to embrace in this community.
And I'm sure they'll be demonstrating Apple products, and it'll be a very good view.
Ma'am, can I just ask, do you see any potential value in this trip?
I see a lot more value in using another method of getting this information.
Do you see any potential value?
Well, I said that, you know, I'm sure that they're going to come back with a lot of good information, but they're also
That's
going to
what
come out
this
with
is
a
about.
certain skewed point of view that's going to lead to sales down the line.
It's about, first of all, you know that the people going are not in any type of position to buy anything. I am not empowered to make a decision on behalf of the board to make a purchase or enter into a contract with Apple. This is about getting people in a room and doing something positive. Not every trip is nefarious.
I never said it
intentions for
was,
this
but you
trip
were going to
are
be on the board for
positive.
3 years, and you have more than enough opportunity later down the line.
The opportunity is now, and it is a positive thing for this community. I find it funny that 2 minutes ago you were advocating for a larger voice for business vis-a-vis the calendar, but now business is an enemy.
Not one business, I'm talking about all businesses.
And this is a business.
It's
A
a
very
business that's
important
flying you
business.
out there for a reason.
It is already a
not flying
partner.
They're not flying us. The
Excuse me,
expenses
we're
are being
paying for
borne.
that. We're spending our money so they can sell us something.
They're not selling us anything. That's
That's-
not even in the itinerary.
It doesn't have to be in the itinerary, it's the way marketing works.
Well, I'm a little confused because I received many emails from you, several of you writing back and forth. And what I read from you, Mrs. Justice, was you were concerned because you were not considered for the trip.
That was a mention that I wasn't even informed. I was not the only one not informed.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
But if you were concerned that you weren't considered, then would you have gone and
No, I
would we
wouldn't
have
have.
this discussion
I would have done the
tonight
same thing
had
I'm
you been
doing
picked?
right now. You should know that by now. If you don't know me well enough by now, then you're really misjudging me. I would have said the same thing.
Hard to believe.
I'm very concerned about how we spend our resources and our money. And money is part of the resources, but also our perception to the public.
But if you say this could be a nefarious sales trip, then you're painting the perception for the public.
The public's come to me. I didn't have to paint anything.
Well, yeah.
Well, from what I've heard, this has been a positive thing, because it is a positive thing. It's leadership coming together to try to see if we can do something innovative and if we can work together on all different levels. And I would hope that everyone can see that. Our plane fare is $400 or less per person. We're paying that. Apple's not paying us for a thing. Apple's not providing a thing. So you can think what you like. I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm a conduit of information. Nelson is as well. And, you know, we're gonna come back and report what we hear and work together with the group that's going, and I appreciate being a part of it.
Thank you for coming.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to move item number E up in the agenda. I beg everyone's indulgence because we do have someone who is needing to get back to, I believe it's Raleigh. So at this time, I would like to ask if we can move item number E, the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and Audit Report, Appendix K, next. So, Ms. Small?
Thank you, I appreciate that. Tonight, I am pleased to present our comprehensive annual financial report for the year ended June 30, 2019. The report is available for the public on our website under resources, and I'm just not going to go through, I promise, the entire document tonight, but I just wanted to provide a brief presentation for you, and then I'm going to turn it over to Eddie Burke, the audit partner with Cherry Beckert, who will present the results of the audit report. So. Just to sort of remind you about the document, there are several sections. The introductory section includes a letter of transmittal that sort of explains the document to both the board and to the public. So if anyone is interested in the public that about the report, that's a good place to look, as well as right after the audit report in the financial section, there's something called the Management's Discussion and Analysis, which is a good summary of all the information contained in the report. So if somebody doesn't want to read all 133 pages, that's probably a good place to take a look. There's also two different types of financial statements. There's the government-wide financial statements that it kind of includes all of our capital assets and our long-term debt. And you may recall last year there were some new GASB pronouncements that required that we put the long-term liabilities related to post-employment benefits on our books. We don't really have any control over those, the amount of that liability, because all those rates for contribution are set by the state, but it ends up creating a large liability for us on our books. So when you just look at the government-wide, you see a negative net position of $138.5 billion, which is a little scary. But when you switch to the fund financial statement, which is more of our operating statements, a shorter-term view, and where you can see our annual budget and expenditures and revenues, that shows we're in a much better financial position. Our governmental fund balance at June 30th was $28.7 million, which is $622,000 less than the prior year. Most of that's restricted. $19.9 million is restricted either for required state reserves, carryover appropriations for projects, so that's going to include some capital projects. It's also going to include some of the repairs that we were continuing for after Hurricane Florence. As well as ongoing grants and the unbudgeted funds that are at the school level. That left $8.8 million of unassigned general fund balance under the board's control. You have a board policy that it's not a requirement, but it's a goal that of 7% of our governmental budget would be retained in that reserve. After the hurricane, of course, we had to drop it back a little bit to repair the buildings, but that's really what it's for those emergency type situations. So currently the balance represents 3.2% of governmental expenditures. So a little bit higher than last year, so we're making progress as we receive insurance proceeds, and we're still waiting on some FEMA reimbursement. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'll be in a much better position.
Mary, we typically try to concern ourselves with being able to cover a 60-day period. And that equals about how much of a fund balance typically?
Well, there's 7%. It's still going to be less than 1 month. So it from a cash flow perspective, that doesn't get us very far, but at least gives us enough that in an emergency, we can have some cash flow, but also can get some things done while we wait on reimbursements.
In the past, we obviously had the hurricane, which was the most obvious emergency that we tap fund balance. But in the past, when we've had government shutdowns and we've had to use these funds to carry over until federal funds could come back in.
We've
You're
had,
talking
even this year with the state budget, we have some of our state money that is not yet approved because we're still in an interim budget situation. So about $1 million of EC funding, we're having to use local money until that state money is released. So it is helpful to have that fund balance so we can continue normal operations until the revenue comes through.
Okay, is that EC money from the state?
Yeah, some of the money there's different allotments of state funding. And in the continuing resolution that the state approved, because we don't technically have an approved state budget yet, we have a temporary state budget, not all of the money has been released. And so we are still waiting and hopeful that maybe in January we'll have a state budget. But
So that's
it
state
is
money.
possible we could end the year without ever having access to that money, and then we would have to use fund balance for that.
But the supposition then would be that it would become available at some point if the legislature decides to.
Yes, it would
But
become
until it
available.
does, we're having to use our local fund balance to cover those expenses.
Okay, and that's about $1 million, is
Yeah.
what she said.
Yes.
But we still have 8.8 million?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and also, you were talking about shutdowns. Were you referring to I think it was last year's government shutdown where that,
2 years ago, just before you came on the board, when there was the government was slow in releasing Title I funds, we had to cover some expenses with local funds until those Title I funds came in.
do you know how much that was? I'm curious.
I don't recall. We could look it up for you, but I don't recall.
Was
But we
it under $1
also,
million?
sometimes there's just a delay in the approval of some of the grant funding because it's on a different year. And sometimes we have to go, we hire teachers at the beginning of the year, and maybe some of the federal money doesn't come until October, November. So that could happen on a regular basis.
About how much does that run?
That would vary from year to year.
And is
Yeah,
it-
our federal budget's about 11 million. And
I
so-
mean, it
but
stays.
annually, it's about 11.
I'm trying to understand. I know that when Florence hit, we went down a couple million until we got reimbursed from, I guess.
12 million, we hit the fund balance for almost, I believe, $12 million.
Right. We appropriated, we had part of it at like 9.7 out of fund balance, and the rest was from the state emergency reserve.
Okay.
And so depending on what happens with FEMA,
So right now,
everyone
if
will
we-
decide, if FEMA covers all of that, we'd pay part of that back to the state.
So
So
right now, if we had another Florence incident to happen this summer, we would be hard pressed to be able to do what we did last time.
Okay, on the other hand, the point is that it is an emergency fund, correct? For emergencies like the situation.
Yeah, not to be, it's one-time money that you shouldn't be using for what you call recurring expenses.
Correct. So, but that's what it is. It's one-time money for
it is one-time
emergencies.
money. Once it's spent, that's it.
And it's not designated as just for buildings. It could be for
No.
other uses.
Well, the designated portion
Well, salary,
is
obviously.
budgeted.
Okay.
The
Thank
the
you.
designated portion, the board has already decided what to do with that money, and it's rolling from year to year. I also wanted to mention that we had a state funding increase last year of 5.6% and a local current expense increase of 4.3%. And overall, our governmental revenues increased 8.4 million. Also, just wanted to mention that the financial section also includes some supplemental information, some budget comparisons in the back of the report that you may find helpful, as well as 10 years of analysis where you can compare numbers for the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you. I'll enjoy reading it.
Say again?
Said I'll enjoy reading it.
Oh, good, oh, good. At this time, I would like to take a minute to thank our finance team for their hard work and dedicated service throughout the year to sort of help coordinate the management of the resources of our system. It's quite an undertaking, and they do a great job. Specifically, I'd like to recognize Rhonda Turner, who's here, who is our finance director, who coordinates the audit and the financial report. And just wanted to recognize her. And at this time, would like to turn it over to Mr. Burke to present the audit report. And at the end, if you have any questions, we'll be glad to answer.
Good evening. What I would like to do in the few minutes that I have with you is go through just a couple topics. First, to introduce the team that we had this year. Just so you know, we did have a recurring team that had experience with the school board, which I think helps out just overall in the audit process and that type of thing. Then very briefly discuss what our role is as an auditor. what our three primary goals are when you hire us. Then I have a quick slide on, at a very high level, what the results were from the opinions. And then I have a sort of a summary of the overall audit. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, either during the presentation or after it. The engagement team this year, I led the engagement team as the engagement partner. Lonnie Keogh, who's actually been involved with the engagement a number of years, she stepped in, was the senior manager this year. And then we had a senior who was repeat this year from the prior year, and then we had some other staff accountants that worked on the engagement throughout the audit process. As far as our role as your external auditor, basically there's three primary things that you hire us to do. First, we have rules, we have standards that we have to follow. We build our audit plan, we build our audit approach to make sure that we are complying with those standards. Secondly, once we do the audit, that's the issuance of the opinions. I'll go through those in just a second. And then the third primary responsibility is if certain events occur during the audit process, we're required to communicate that. So that is done with a letter, and then I've got some key highlights on what was discussed in the letter. But it's very specific things that is addressed. I refer to it as a SAS 114 letter. From a highlights perspective, there were 4 opinions expressed or issued by Cherry Beckard. The first opinion was in regards an opinion on the financial statements or the numbers themselves. The second opinion, I refer to it as the Yellow Book report. That's where we did a compliance audit and looked at the internal control structure over the board's compliance with North Carolina general statutes. And then there were 2 additional reports. There was a federal and a state report where we call it single audit, where we went in and we did compliance testing on selected grants, and we also looked at the controls over the administration of those grants. Excuse me. All 4 of those opinions were unmodified, or I refer to it as a clean opinion. That is the opinion that you want. Basically, we feel like for the first opinion that the numbers that are reflected can be relied upon, and we did not have any compliance issues as far as your compliance with North Carolina general statutes or how you administer your federal and state dollars this year. There were no findings. There were no adjusting journal entries. Basically, the numbers that the board ended up with is what we ended up opining on. And there were no material past adjusting journal entries or anything like that during the audit process. And just so you know, we looked at 6 programs, and there is a methodology that is dictated down from the feds and from the state on the types of programs that we look at on an annual basis. And we did look at the hurricane funds, just so you know, because we were talking about that a few minutes ago. And then summary, the opinions were clean, no adjusting journal entries. The board has done a really good job, or the finance department, in as far as internal controls are concerned. I mentioned to you the control environments over the financial aspects of the school board versus the grants. I mean, you've done a very good job at segregating duties, having good checks and balances into the system. There was no material weakness, significant deficiencies. And to reiterate, Mary Hazel, we received full cooperation from the finance department. I think this was the second year in a row you had some type of storm that you had to deal with. This one was not nearly as significant. The report was delivered by October 31st this year. You were able to work through that, so we're able to meet that deadline. So with that being said, that concludes my comments, and I'll be happy to address any questions you have, or if there's anything else that you want to ask Mary Hazel, I'll be happy to address that at this time.
Does any board member have any questions?
I did ask this last year, and just for the public record, I'd like people to understand. You said you do a number of school systems, correct? And how would you assess the health of New Hanover County schools compared to those other systems?
That's always a trick question. I would say that y'all have a very well-run school board. I'll just say that. I do probably 20, 25 school boards, so it's really hard to say. But I would say that y'all are in the top tier. I mean, y'all have a very well-run finance department.
Thank you very much.
Kudos to Ms. Small and her department.
Thank you, Ms. Small.
Thank you very much.
All right, so moving back in order, item number B, CTE Appendix G, Dr. Smith?
Yes, I would like to invite to the podium Ms. Schufert. She is going to provide this evening a comprehensive program overview of our career and technical education programs for the district.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity to provide a programmatic overview of the Career and Technical Education Department within our LEA. One of the things I want to place an emphasis on before I start the presentation is the mission for career and technical education in New Hanover County Schools, and that is empowering all students to be successful citizens, workers, and leaders in a global economy. Our overarching vision for career and technical education is listed here, but on the following slides, I'm going to go into further details, but I just wanted to share a snapshot with you here. All CTE programs are held to the highest standards. An emphasis locally has been placed to have some consistency, programmatic consistency within our LEA, and in the development of professional learning communities, as well as the implementation of our support model. All learners are empowered to choose a meaningful education and career. With this particular element of our vision, we are focusing on our resources that we're using in our schools as far as our career facilitators, as well as working to expanding the opportunities for students to be exposed to the world of work. All learning is facilitated by knowledgeable experts. We have delegated a significant portion of our resources to support teachers with participation in professional development opportunities, as well as purchased an online resource for teachers to engage in professional development at their own pace. We also provide an opportunity for teachers to participate in monthly PLCs, and these are offered by program area. All systems work together to put learner success first. This is an overarching area which includes the collaboration with all of our stakeholders, our administrators, our students, our teachers, ensuring that we're utilizing resources to provide transparency to continue to offer the services to the students in our district. The backbone of the Career and Technical Education program is provided by what's called Perkins 5. July 1, 2019, this particular legislation was adopted, and so beginning with this academic year, but it's significant in the upcoming academic year, you'll see significant changes in career and technical education because the guidelines that show programmatic success have changed. What you'll see here is the new Perkins 5 law requires that we conduct a CLNA, which is a common local needs assessment, every 2 years. The previous legislation required that we conduct that on an annual basis. If you look at the elements listed here, these elements allow us to really provide innovation within our programs because the key is, in every element that you see here, it has to be data-driven. So instead of just writing strategies to address needs at a school, we have to engage with stakeholders. We have to survey our students to ensure that we're providing the resources, the classes, and things that they need on a consistent basis. Listed here are our indicators that are required under Perkins 5 legislation. One of the ones not listed here, and I see a typo, is the local economy. All of our programs must be aligned with what's happening in our local economy within New Hanover County. But in summary, as you'll see here, the focus is on student performance, our programs that we're offering at our high school to ensure that we're offering the classes that are required or asked of by our students that we're working towards implementation of our programs. Meaning, are we offering career pathways, or are we only offering singleton programs? So we want to make sure we're setting students up for success and providing our programs to all students. Sorry, I got a little click happy. What you'll see here is a snapshot of the CTE program in New Hanover County Schools. This is important because everything I've just shared with you, the Perkins 5 funding that we receive, helps to support everything listed here. We have in excess of 1,300 devices that are supported within our budget, so we work very closely with the technology department to ensure that software is loaded on these devices as outlined by the Department of Public Instruction, that we provide training to our teachers so they can continue to offer the 129 courses that we're able to offer within our district. We have 8,767 students that are enrolled in our classes, and that's the unduplicated count. The duplicated count is 13,972, meaning the students who enroll in our classes in the fall and then return again in the spring in the same academic year. To support the needs of these students, there are 8 program areas. However, only 6 of them are actually programs tied to curriculum, and I'll list those on the next slide. But in summary, there are 119 career and technical education staff members that makes this work happen district-wide. So again, a snapshot of our program. Listed here are the program areas within career and technical education. Each program area that you see listed has a separate license requirement for teachers to meet, and each program listed has a variety of courses and pathways that students can pursue. There are 2 areas that are not aligned with the curriculum, and that's career development. And we have career facilitators in each school that work closely with students to meet those needs. Also, special populations. This is a position also at each of the high school where they work with students at their schools. One of the things listed here is CTSOs, and that is career and technical student organizations. Those are our student clubs. What we'd like to see happen is definitely an increase in the offerings of these opportunities for students. This is a snapshot of our proficiency. You can see that and the comparison of how we perform in comparison to other districts in our region, as well as the state performance levels. I'd like to now take the opportunity to give you just a snapshot of some of the program highlights at each level that we work with. New under the Perkins 5 legislation is an opportunity for us to use federal funds to work with 5th graders, which is an exciting opportunity. This is called our 5th grade career awareness program. And what we've done as a department is we've hosted career opportunities at some of our elementary schools to expose them to career clusters. But what we've done that's significant this academic year is provide a resource called Virtual Job Shadow Junior that engages students with the career clusters, allows them to learn about different career pathways, and allows them to gain an understanding of what their interest is before they hit the middle school. So definitely working to develop that pipeline. A middle school program highlight, and this definitely does not represent all of the great things that the CTE teachers are doing, but I wanted to take this time, knowing that it would be limited, to highlight the newer and innovative programs that we've started within our district. We have Project Lead the Way programs available at 3 of our middle schools. Williston Middle School is now offering a PITSCO program, which has an emphasis on STEM. And they're both focusing on project-based learning where students work in team environments. And we have computer science offered as a CTE elective now at 4 of our middle schools within our county.
Could you tell me what those middle schools are?
Yes, those middle schools are Trask Middle School, Myrtle Grove, Murray, and Williston, and I probably should increase that by 1 because we do have virtual computer science options that we're providing to the students at Gregory. So they're actually taking them online.
What is the programming language they're using for computer science? Or what
Well,
are
they use a
studying?
variety, but it's mostly based on Scratch. Okay. So they're using some of the Google CS and things of that nature.
How is it determined which middle schools are having, have these programs?
Well, I started 3 years ago, so it's been me just taking time to gain an understanding of the LEA, to gain an understanding of the pipeline that we're trying to develop. So it's more about having these individual conversations, but the goal is to increase these opportunities so that we have STEM and computer science at every middle school within our LEA. Just gonna take a little bit of time. And lastly, a resource that we're offering at all middle schools within the district is the next level of the virtual job shadow program, and that is virtual job shadow minus the junior. The junior program is animated, and the virtual job program that we offer to middle school students is not animated, and preparing them for high school programs. And last but not least, as far as the high school programming, newer programs that we have computer science now at 2 high schools. We have 2 teachers that went to PD this past summer. They're offering AP Computer Science, but also considering offering computer science principles, which is more of an introductory level. You know that we have an existing NAF Academy, which is the Academy of Finance, but we're excited about Hoggard's desire to move in a direction and provide an opportunity to students, not just at their school, but within our district by starting an Academy of Information Technology at their school. And that would be new for 2020, 2021. As far as Project Lead the Way at Laney High School, we expanded that Project Lead the Way program and are now offering aerospace engineering. And the principal is definitely looking to maximize the human capital that she has on site to potentially add another teacher to her PLTW program, whose main focus is engineering. In the bottom left, we have drone technology. You guys, I'm sure you've heard of the buzz, but extends into many of the economic drivers in our local economy. It is a thriving program at Ashley High School. I'm sure they're gonna max their enrollment, but we're excited to be a part of a pilot and be one of 20 districts in the state of North Carolina to offer that in our LEA. Over on the bottom right is CTE Virtual. We provide virtual learning to students within our district, realizing that it's very difficult to often enroll students in our classes when they have scheduling issues. We also sometimes have concerns with human capital. There are courses that principals may want to offer, but they don't have the staff in their building to offer it. So our CTE local virtual program allows us to be adaptive and meet the needs of our schools. And last but not least, definitely excited about continued support for CTEC. At their school, we have business marketing, a thriving culinary arts program, and we're definitely looking to grow in the upcoming academic year. So those are some of the newer and innovative programming at the high school level.
That's in addition to the traditional programming that's been going on at those schools for a long
Yes.
time.
Okay,
Yes.
and that's what I was going to ask, the traditional programming, you're referring to the staples of society? Things like automotive,
Yes.
woodworking, construction, which are very valuable.
Yes.
So you do offer those programs also?
We do offer those programs, and as far as automotive, we have agriculture, education, horticulture at Hoggard. The Singleton programs, we also provide transportation for students district-wide. So when we have a Singleton program like automotive that's only offered at New Hanover High School, we actually bus students to those schools so that they have access to those programs as well.
If you get a chance to visit the program at New Hanover, I mean, it's a full garage. They've got the lifts and
Okay,
everything to
I
work
will
there.
check that out.
Yeah.
But now, you said culinary programs. Do all the high schools offer that as far as the opportunity for students to do that?
Yes. Every high school has a culinary arts program, and I think about 3 of the 4 are actually working towards having some type of enterprise. So with the culinary arts program, not only can we expose students to the culinary arts career, but they can run an enterprise where they actually run a restaurant within their classrooms. So we're definitely working towards upfitting these labs for these
And all the high
experiences.
schools have health science programs as well.
Okay,
Health
good.
science, marketing, business ed, carpentry, and
That's on the
construction.
CTE?
Yes,
And you have 109 employees district-wide?
119. Yes.
119, I mean, so.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow.
Yeah.
They must be spread pretty thin.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do what we can do. One of the great things that we're very proud of is our Career Pathway Summer Camps. This past summer, we offered camps free of charge to students who were transitioning into 10th and 11th grade. Our initial target were 10th graders, however, we had to open it up, of course, we don't want to turn students down. So students had an opportunity to engage in learning with instructors from Cape Fear Community College, as well as some of our CTE instructors, and they participated in culminating experiences. Med Camp students had an opportunity to participate in a lab experience at Central in their biotech lab. It was pretty cool. I had a chance to observe that. The STEM camp had an opportunity to visit the engineering program at NC State. And then the construction camp, had an opportunity to actually visit a construction site with a local developer and work closely with kids making it to make artifacts as a culminating experience for those programs.
How many students normally get involved in these programs during the summer?
Last summer, we were able to serve 60 students. We definitely hope that this number will increase. In 2020, our hopes is to also expand the types of camps we're going to offer. We're looking to expand to hospitality and tourism, and also try to offer an information technology camp. Within the budget, we allocate $30,000 on an annual basis to paid internships. This is where we actually pay our students to engage in work opportunities within our district. We've placed 11 students this academic year, so we have students in technology, and they're placed actually with the ITFs at the high school. We have a student in PR who works closely with Valita Quattlebaum, 4 students in NHCS TV, a student in child nutrition and purchasing. And these are paid experiences.
How do they structure that? Is that during the school day, after school?
Yes, students who participate in our internship program are actually enrolled in the internship course, and it's based on availability of their schedule. So they go when they register for that opening. A lot of these experiences, of course, they work towards the end of the day.
Yeah, I'm just trying to understand the rationale. Pay, I have no problem with that. I'm just, because we have other internships that I just didn't realize we actually paid.
Yeah, actually paid. And they're paid minimum wage.
It's still money. It's good.
Moving on, I wanted to give you a snapshot of our Career Pathways initiatives. Students at Work is actually one of the programs that Ms. Adams referenced, where we actually take students on back of the house tours and engage in experiences with the local businesses within New Hanover County. Last year, we hosted our first annual Career Pathways Fair, in which we engaged 5th and 8th graders, and we also accepted 6th and 7th if the teacher slid them in there. In a fair here in this facility, we had a packed house, but it was very engaging. Students had an opportunity to talk directly with teachers at the high school level, as well as students, the community college, and as you can see, the local industry. It's a packed house, great experiences. We will host another one this year. March 12th, I think is the date, at Cape Fear Community College in downtown Wilmington. This slide probably doesn't do our partners justice, but it's a snapshot of the partners that we work with. Everything that I've shared with you so far, they help us to make these things happen, from donating lunches for our students for the camps, to providing professional development during our professional learning community meetings, and also engaging with the staff and trying to see how we can better meet the needs of industry. As a requirement, we have to have a CTE advisory council and meet at least twice a year. This is the leadership for our current advisory council, and that is Dr. Greg Williams, who's the Chief of Engineering with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. The vice chair is Ivy Moraine, who is a retired principal with New Hanover County Schools. This slide shares the remaining list of our advisory council. Required members per legislation is Dr. Markley, who serves as a member, myself, who serves as the secretary, a current principal within our district, and that principal is Dr. Rob Morgan. We're glad to have him, new this year. Cape Fear Community College president, but they have identified a designee, and that is Mark Council. The remaining members are members of the council who have agreed to participate on our advisory council, but not a requirement. Areas of growth within our department have a direct focus on our stakeholders, students, teachers and principals, and central office. What we are working towards is building the capacity within our department, ensuring that we can strengthen experiences for students, engage teachers and principals to ensure we are all in the loop of requirements as it relates to career and technical education, and to ensure that we can have discussions so that we're moving forward in the directions that the administrators would like to take their CTE programs. And last but not least, building our central office capacity. With all of the staff that we have listed, we could not make this happen without the engagement and the support from our staff. And on the bottom, it's kind of like one of those plugs that we always focus on, and that is engaging and educating, sorry for the typo, external partners and stakeholders to make sure they're informed about what career and technical education is. This is a snapshot of the CTE budget for New Hanover County Schools. We receive funding, state funding in PRCs 13 and 14, and federal funds in PRC 17. This does not reflect the reduction from charter school growth, nor reduction in PRC 13, but it's about level. I think we have like $3,500 less in 14. PRC 13 is primarily managed and tied to human capital, so it kind of resides in a collaboration with HR and finance, but all of that money is tied into teachers or staff. PRC 14 allows us to support the programs so that we can sustain what we currently have, and PRC 17 allows us to continue to implement new programs and sustain them. So our operating budget for the fiscal year, $787,000, $87,316.
So for PRC 17, does that all have to be on just new programming? Or can that be sustaining new programs that you developed maybe in the prior year?
So it allows me to support new programs up to 3 years per the old legislation, and it also allows me to support new and innovative things that we've not funded necessarily in the past.
Okay, thank you.
What is the source of this funding? Federal, state, local? What do you know? What is this given here?
Yeah. So PRC 13 and PRC 14, they are state funds, and PRC 17 is federal funds.
Okay. So do we have any local funds?
No. Well, we do have local funds that are allocated to CTE, but they're tied to human capital, like your supplements that are for the CTE staff, but not an operating budget to spend on teachers' resources in the classroom.
Thank you.
PRC 13 is based on ADM in grades 8 through 12 and help to support these particular program areas. Just wanted to give you that snapshot. Again, this is the total amount of money used to support the 119 positions that we have in CTE. PRC 13 months of employment that are allocated for middle schools is listed here. The way that we determine how schools receive their positions is based on a district-wide formula that we receive, and we make some shift based on special programming and specialty needs within our district. So there's 190 months of employment allocated to all middle schools and 19 positions allocated to middle schools as a whole. There's 90 months of employment allocated to early colleges and non-traditional sites, and in total, 9 positions allocated to early colleges and non-traditional sites. In our traditional high schools, out of PRC 13, we have 820 months of employment allocated, which equates to 82 positions in our traditional high schools. And last but not least, there are 52 months of employment allocated to the central office curricular support, which equates to 5 positions. One of those positions consists of our virtual teachers who helps to provide instructions to students district-wide. PRC 14 is based on ADM in grades 8 through 12, and this is the funding that we have in PRC 14, minus the $3,500 that we have just lost based on our recent reduction. PRC 17 is based on 70% of children in poverty, ages 5 to 17 from the previous year, 30% children in ages 5 through 17 from the previous year. And again, this is the total funds allocated. So that is an overarching introduction to career and technical education. I'm certain I can take an additional hour if I went into further detail, but I'd like to ask if you have any questions of me at this point.
Being that we're in this venue and it's an opportunity to put it out there, what positions do you struggle to fill within CTE when you're looking? Because they're industry professionals, a lot of times have some of the skill sets that you're looking for. Could you speak to that?
Yes. Currently, this year, we have struggled with some of our specialty programs. Like, we've worked for a moment to fill some tech ed positions. It is very difficult to fill carpentry positions. You know, while we have a local economic, need and a way to really guide students into that area, I worked with the principal at Hoggart High School, and they had a position allocated for a construction teacher. We couldn't find a person to fill the position, so they had to use the resources somewhere else. There are times where we struggle to find the fax positions in the culinary arts. It just depends, but we do use all resources. We post on Moodles. We consult with some of the colleges to see if there's graduates, but those are the main areas that we kind of seem to struggle with.
So it's a shortage of certification in those fields right now, is it?
What I think it is sometimes the people who are in industry don't understand that they could come and work for us and they didn't have to have a teaching degree. That because it's career and technical education, you can actually transition in these areas, and we welcome you because you bring a vast amount of experience, which would mean great experiences for our students.
So when you were struggling to find the construction teacher at Hoggard, was there any other ways that we were advertising out there besides the traditional ways to try to reach those people that did not know they could qualify?
Yes, we did. We used some local resources. We talked with our local home builders association and asked them to pass it out amongst themselves. We even shared it with the leadership in Lowe's Home Improvement, because that's where a lot of the people who do the work come to do some of their buying. And so, yeah, we pull out all tricks that we have in our pockets, but just the time that we have to fill these vacancies and then utilize the fund before the end of the fiscal year, sometimes it's just difficult to make that decision as a principal, because our funds don't carry over.
Right, makes sense.
You mentioned that the drone program at Ashley is wildly popular. What are some of the other very popular programs that we have at the high school and middle school levels?
That I want to say our health science programs. One of the things that's difficult about our health science programs, we actually certify students who can go straight to work and have their CNA. We have a cap, so we can only offer the class to 10 students at a time. And so it's very difficult to make that decision. So in health science, it's a growing area that it's kind of difficult to turn students away. I think we have a good balance with the other programs. The Singleton programs, of course, we always worry about balancing that out, especially when we open it up to all schools in the district. Any additional questions? Well, thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item C, finding solutions with Title I federal funding, Appendix I. Dr. Smith?
Yes, I'd like to invite Dr. Jethro to the podium. She's going to be presenting this evening on finding solutions through federal funding. I know that there was some discussion at our prior board meeting in regards to our Title I schools. So Dr. Jethro is going to provide you with an introduction to Title I and then tell you how we're using that funding to support our schools. Dr. Jethro.
Good evening again. Thank you for your earlier questions, and thank you for this opportunity to share with you and talk about this. As Dr. Smith said, this is for information per your request from the December board meeting, but is my favorite thing to talk about. So very positively stated, I do feel like we do a great job as a district finding solutions with our federal funds. We do make a very positive difference and impact at our schools. And so in an attempt to kind of tell this as a story and how it flows and how it goes, and then highlight some schools at the end, I've chosen to go back and define and then identify the schools that benefit from federal funds and describe the process that we go through to do that. And then, as I said, I'm going to highlight 10 schools at the end so we can really see what it looks like within their buildings. So this money comes to us from the U.S. Department of Education. Is appropriated by Congress, and it comes to our North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and then based on our application process and our identification of Title I schools, then the money is allocated to the schools to use for school improvement. I will be honest with you, one of my most favorite things about my job is that truly this is done with the overlap of every division and every department. Child nutrition, transportation, student support services, technology, instruction, human resources, and most definitely finance. It's really a joint effort, a group effort, and my pleasure to be able to complete the application. So to be a Title I school, you must have a free and reduced lunch percentage of at least 40%. We make the local decision to fund Title I schools K through 8. We support our high schools in a different way. And I've looked into that because I like to see what other districts, other states are doing, and that is very much the trend. About 81% of Title I funds nationally are spent pre-K through 8th grade, so we make that impact in the lower grades prior to the children advancing to high school. In addition to that identification with the 40% free and reduced lunch, the school must collect and analyze their data related to school improvement, related to student achievement, so that they can build a concise, coherent, intentional plan to create school improvement with that money. As I mentioned a little bit earlier when we were talking, I alluded to our new web-based school improvement tool, which is NC STAR. I really can't say enough about how that tool has streamlined the process of school improvement. It is a very positive thing. The tool is built around indicators of school success. Those are all research-based. The schools must create action steps to move those indicators to full implementation. They must set target dates, and then we are all able to monitor their progression through those school improvement steps. So with the 40% free and reduced lunch rating and with their ability to execute the plan and the comprehensive needs assessment, that would make them eligible for Title I. And I apologize in advance to those of you who are in the audience. I know that you're not able to see this, but for the board members in designing this presentation, Mary Hazel and I talked, and we really felt like it kept the impact to keep the whole list together of the 23 schools that are currently Title I for us in this application process. What you'll see in the first column is their original free and reduced lunch percentage, and that number is pulled from IMER's child nutrition data from April 30th of every year. And that is the date that IMER uses when she completes her grant applications and things. That's the date that I use. That is the magic date. Then what you'll see in the next column is the final percent of free and reduced lunch. And that is because many of our schools qualify under the community eligibility provision to have free breakfast and free lunch school-wide, which makes them, a lot of them 100% free and reduced lunch. It gives them a multiplier. So that last column shows after the multiplier of CEP is added. When the schools receive their allotment, it is based on that second column. It's based on the final percentage. So again, for 2019-2020, we had 23 Title I schools. Yes, ma'am?
What is the determination at Holly Shelter and Murrayville? They look like they're close to the same amount that the schools, like, say, Castle Hayne, Alderman, what is the determination that they don't have the 100%?
CEP is done as sort of a feeder piece, so the schools that would feed into the larger school impact what that CEP number is.
And yes, ma'am, and I would want...
Thank you, by the way.
Sure, absolutely. And what I would say is I would definitely want Imer to speak more to that. What I know, and I have learned from her in having conversations, is that she has some direct certification programs and some demographic programs that she can actually take the information of the school district, and then that determines a certain number of identified students that would then make that district eligible for her to move forward with CEP. But again, like I would love for her to be able to speak to that more, but it has to do with her demographic programs and the way she's able to certify a group of students within a school.
I'll get that for you and send it
Okay,
to you.
thank you, because this is a little bit different. Because there's certain schools that, to me, I'd have to understand why she would determine that.
Yes, ma'am. One of the other things that I wanted to point out from this slide, as I said, there are 23 Title I schools this year, and I already made a real big deal out of that 40% bar. But as you can see, Carolina Beach Elementary School is 0.09 of a percentage point away from 40%. And we were able to qualify them this year as a Title I school in our narrative, in the Title I application. And that is something that we have done before. It's actually it's very much recommended with ESSA and with NCDPI because they really do want to reach all students. And if you think about that, that might have been the difference in maybe one free and reduced lunch application.
And that's why it's critical when we start the process at the beginning of the year that we get those forms, that information back from parents. It's not just about the paperwork because it directly impacts what we can do for students.
Mm-hmm. And no high schools are included in this.
No, ma'am. So how does the Title I work? This was really my way of summarizing this because if we look across the top, those 4 S's really sort of describe the flow of the process. And then underneath that, those 5 P's really articulate the impact that we're able to make. And so I would like to spend a minute on each of these. Typically in May, for the spring application process, Dr. Smith brings to you, as my supervisor, on the board agenda, the request to approve the district's Title I application. And what she is really doing and what you all are really doing at that time is giving me permission to execute the application and permission to apply. The applications typically due on June 30th. At this point, when she comes forward and asks you for this approval, the schools have submitted to me and submitted to finance their comprehensive needs assessment and a plan of how they would spend their Title I funds. So we've really begun working, we've begun laying out the outline of what the overall application would look like. Upon approval, and when we see the arrival of those federal funds, the very next thing that we have to do is deal with set-asides. And there are 3 set-asides that I'm going to mention in just one second: the private school participation, parent involvement, and pre-K that come off the top. Private school participation and parent-family engagement are required. Pre-K is not required, but obviously a very big focus and priority for our district, and also very highly encouraged with ESSA and with NCDPI.
How do you get this private school participation? How do you determine it? Because they opt in, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
You don't, I mean, you advertise and then they opt in, is that how it works?
Yes, ma'am, we do.
So how many of them do that?
2. And I do have a slide on that. Would you like me to skip ahead to it, or would you like?
No, you can go, I'm sorry.
Are
I
you
guess
sure?
I'm
'Cause I'll do
jumping the
either
gun
way.
because I was just trying to, okay.
Yeah, no, great question, and
Okay.
I will definitely do either way.
I'll wait for the
I can go
slide.
I can go forward and go
Go
back. I can go
ahead.
forward and go back.
Yeah.
So after those first three big set-asides, then the schools receive their allotments, and they prioritize, again, their spending to create school improvement based on the needs of their school. And the principals and their leadership teams really drive that, and again, it's quite a pleasure for me to get to work with all 23 of them, and to have been a Title I principal at Sunset Park. And so then the school improvement really is executed through the positions and the programming. And as I said, I'm gonna just want to touch on each one of these things. So where do we see the impact? Typically, I will start the federal funding year with about $8.6 million. Most of that is new money. It is the new allocation. Some of that is carryover. We are allowed to keep up to 15% of our total allocation in carryover. And as Mary Hazel alluded to earlier, that can be very important because a lot of times the new money does not come and does not drop. I've seen it come as late as November. And so we are able to provide a consistency and a continuity of services because we can retain our Title I employees. And I have to tell you guys, when I go to regional meetings and state meetings and I get to be with other federal programs directors, especially from smaller districts, they are very jealous of that. They are very jealous of us. A lot of them are sitting, typically our regional meeting is in October, and a lot of them are sitting in the room with me, and I've actually seen them jump out of their seat because they see the email on the phone where their money drops, and they can call HR and tell them to hire the people back. And we don't have to do that. So the carryover is really a good thing. So again, this is a snippet, this is a snapshot out of a program called CCIP. And it's the web-based tool. It stands for Comprehensive Continuous Improvement Plan. It's the web-based tool that I use for grants management to manage this application, and it talks directly to finances, web-based tools. So everything's always accurate and everything is always up to date. But as you can see, a little over 75% of our Title I funds are prioritized for people, with the remaining for other purchases. And I think this slide really makes the point that our principals prioritize the social capital and the relationships and the difference that the grown people can make with children over the pocket capital. But again, we're going to see evidence of both as we move forward.
And is this a decision we made, or is this how we are legislated to spend the funds?
Really, this is driven by the principals. It's how the principals prioritize using the money more so for the people.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So here it comes. Here it is. We were 3 slides away. We were almost there. The private school proportionate share. So we are required to meet with all of the private schools that are a part of the state registry, and we do. We are required to send out, I believe it is 3 advertisements to make sure that they have the opportunity to participate. And so there's not a lot of turnover in the private school directors and principals, so I've been able to form relationships with them and communicate with them, and they're happy to come and listen and talk to us and hear what we have to say. But in the spring, as a part of the application process, we do this. We host a meeting, we invite all of them, and we talk about what is available to them in terms of federal programs. Historically, we have 2 schools that participate, and they would be the 2 that you see here, St. Mary's and St. Mark's. Some of you may know Joyce Price is the director at St. Mary's, and Dennis Fleck, who is actually a retired New Hanover County Schools administrator, is the director at St. Mark's, and they're very easy to work with. But they end up with close to $30,000 of our federal funds to use toward their students that qualify, that meet the demographic and meet the at-risk in terms of needs. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we may not just give them this money, we facilitate the spending of this money. We partner with them, we collaborate in making good decisions, and then we monitor the use of it. But I do have in those 3 bullet points really the impact that we see this money make with the private schools,
Yeah,
which,
charter schools would apply directly for their own funding since they're state schools, not private schools.
Good, so that goes to them and not from us.
Correct.
Okay.
yes, ma'am, was that?
Yeah, that's, well, and we have quite a few private schools in this district, and so they just don't take up the opportunity. These are the only two that historically have done it. No one else has?
Yes, ma'am.
And St. Mary's downtown has probably takes the lion's share. They serve a very high needs population.
Right, yeah. I'm just, that's interesting.
The second of the Ps and the second set aside is pre-K. As I said, we really prioritize this as a district. And so we currently, out of the Title I budget, earmark about $825,000, which we are able to blend with any other state money that we receive for pre-K. And I did, again, in partnership with Ms. Smiles, create this slide to have the most accurate information, and I have written here on my piece of paper a direct quote from her when we were doing this. This pre-K program could not exist at the level and with the fidelity that we are able to do in New Hanover County Schools without the support of this federal funding. And so I'm very proud of that partnership and the way that we are able to work together between pre-K and also the transitions into kindergarten. And that's something we have to articulate in the Title I application, is how we support those transitions. But again, you can see approximately 600 students across 37 classrooms. The next one is parent and family engagement. Parent-family engagement is absolutely a requirement. It is a 1% requirement of our federal funds. All the schools must write a parent and family engagement plan to show how they are going to effectively utilize their 1%, and again, we do monitor that. I have some highlights there that are listed on the screen, particular events that are done very well and that we see repeated. Incidentally, ESSA changed. It used to be parent involvement, and they changed it to parent and family engagement, and very much the emphasis on being more inclusive of everyone that is included in a child's family, and not what those parents can do for us, but what we can do for them, and how we can really involve them in their child's education. Incidentally, we also have School Board Policy 9060, which is our parent and family engagement policy. We are required to have that. It is written with the ESSA terminology and focus points, and we're required to submit that every year in our Title I application for documentation. The biggest impact we see with positions, and so just several things I wanted to mention and call attention to from this slide. These 23 schools are allocated by our normal, regular formulas, 1,368 positions. They are able to multiply that. They are able to add an additional 122 positions with the Title I funds. And I have those divided out for you by position type, but just to sort of make mention, you know, we're able to provide the reduction in class size with the 32 teachers, the additional support with the PD and the planning and the job-embedded coaching with the 22 instructional coaches, to really emphasize small group instruction and classroom support with the 19 teacher assistants, and then various and sundry things, behavior interventions, academic interventions, repeated practice during school, after school tutoring with the tutors that you see there. And I'm going to mention the social workers and parent liaisons when I actually get to a school slide, because I wanted you to kind of see where they were. The other thing I think is important to mention here is you look down the list of schools in rank order, there is not one Title I school that does not prioritize positions. Maybe certified, maybe non-certified, maybe both, but very much a priority for all of our principals in building school improvement. Then the programming. Across the 23 Title I schools, you can see their regular allotment of about $1.6 million, and from Title I funds, that's another almost $1.2 million. And I think that the pie chart shows it really well because it really shows the complement to it. in terms of the funding. Again, I have that divided out for you by type. And just to run through really quick and give some examples, you know, when we're talking about contracts and workshops, we have schools that are able to take advantage of iReady, which is personalized learning and a diagnostic program, visible learning, learning focused, which is some of the most intensive PD for staff members that I can think of. You know, sometimes we have diagnostic tools that are given to just K-2 by the state. Title I schools are able to purchase those diagnostic tools to use with their 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders so that they can multiply that support. And I am going to mention too when I get to the schools, but I want to say under contracts and workshops, these principals are able to pay for subs so that they can have intentional planning days and they can bring their staff together at strategic times to look at data and to move forward with next steps. Supplies, classroom libraries, student supplies, print materials for reading and math, to be able to fully fund field trips in addition to the field trips that you all approve as a school board, and then remediation programs. We see a lot of purchase of phonics programs here, which is very important to our students in terms of closing the achievement gap. And then, as I promised, I wanted to mention some of the schools specifically. And in the interest of time, I chose the top 10 in rank order, and I've sort of paired them up here on the slides to be able to mention and highlight some specific things. If you look at Rachel Freeman and Snipes Academy of Arts and Design, looking across there again, you can see the ability to reduce class size with the teachers, the additional support of the coaches, interventionists to help move all students toward grade level, and the visible learning PD is very specific professional development with a consultant that is designed with the school, in the school, around the school's needs. And they are certainly both improving and showing growth in terms of their student performance. Sunset Park and Wrightsboro, similar trends to the ones that I mentioned with Freeman and Snipes. Again, one of the things I wanted to mention that you see in both of these is that ability to plan PD days and to pay for substitutes to bring the teachers together. I find this to be particularly impactful because it is the proactive planning for subs. It's really being able to set the substitute teachers up for success, to have the rigorous instruction occur, and then have that time with the teachers to execute professional development, to do data dig days for long-range planning and things like that. These two schools both do that particularly well. Forest Hills Global and College Park Elementary School, again, similar trends, but on this slide I wanted to mention the instructional resources. Both of these schools have Foundations, which is a very high-quality phonics program that requires professional development. They have iReady, again, as a diagnostic tool, classroom libraries. I'll particularly mention here, you know, Forest Hills Global Elementary not only teaches the grade level standards, but also the sustainable development goals. And when you are there and when you visit Forest Hills, you see high-quality resources that not only, again, accomplish those grade level standards, but really teach those global goals, that peace and that prosperity to the students. And they use their funding very well to be able to supplement that. Mary C. Williams and Bradley Creek, and this is one of the places where earlier I asked for your permission to wait to mention the social worker and family liaisons and things. Mary C. Williams has a EL population of about 27%, or about a quarter of their school, and Bradley Creek has an EL population closer to about 40%. And knowing these needs and knowing what they need in order to create student success, you can see that these two schools prioritize a family liaison or a family specialist or an additional social worker to really advocate for their families, to translate, to bridge the gap with parent and family engagement. And they really, and these two principals partner and they work together and they share ideas, but they've really done a good job using their resources in that way. And I have one last one. It's like Noah and the Ark, 2 by 2. Alderman Elementary School and Williston Elementary. And I guess at first it might seem odd to put the two of these side by side on the slide, but I think, you know, an elementary school and a middle school. But one of the things that these schools have had in common in the past is to have an achievement gap within their own school, of having learners that are challenged and having high performers. And so really the ability to use their Title I money to differentiate for the needs of all students, to provide the rigor and the remediation, to really cover the needs of all of their learners. And again, you see evidence there of PD, and not only in-school tutoring, but after-school tutoring as well. And I could go on all night. Again, there's 13 of them that we didn't mention, and I'd be happy to talk to any of you or follow up at any time, but I definitely wanted to be mindful of the time that we had tonight, and so I'll stop and say, are there any questions?
I just have one question. You said the spring application process, it's what's currently in the school April 30th, right? How is redistricting impacting that?
I actually had a conversation with my DPI consultant this week because I wanted to make sure. So because we'll use the April 30th numbers, next year's application will stay exactly the same.
Okay.
And then once the dust settles in terms of redistricting and the numbers and the free and reduced lunch population and McKinney-Vento and all the different things, the following year, then we would make the adjustments.
Are you worried there's going to be any kind of a deficit, though, or any of our schools, like when we're looking at how we're moving population, or does it seem?
I think it seems close enough that I'm not worried about there being a deficit. And when I really sat down and thought about it, I appreciate the question. I'm happy for those principals to have the time for the dust to settle, and for us to be able to prepare and really lead into that following year.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for Porter's Neck Elementary School?
Well, I'm going to come back in a minute and talk to you about Porter's Neck Elementary School. And I haven't looked at what we suspect Porter's Neck free and reduced lunch percentage would be based on the redistricting.
My guess would be they wouldn't qualify to be a Title I school.
Oh, no, they won't.
So it wouldn't really have any impact on them.
Okay.
What it might impact other schools that by taking students out, it might impact schools' percentages further down the
Yeah.
line, particularly Blair.
I was gonna say, I'd expect Blair to increase.
Yeah,
Maybe
the biggest impact will probably be on Blair, not Porter's Neck.
What type of percentage are you looking at? Are they gonna be affected for next year?
I
There's a
would-
position that they might need, or?
I would hate to give you a guess. Let me get the actual number and get it to you.
So what you're saying is Blair's free and reduced lunch would probably increase?
I would suspect, but that's a guess. Like I said, I'd rather give you a real number than a guess.
Thank you.
Unless, Addie, unless you got a number sitting over there.
I can look it up, but I don't know it off the top of my head.
I thought you knew everything.
But that's the school that'll most likely be impacted by Porter's Neck.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Just a reminder, this was part of that conversation we had, just so you know, our starting point for resources in those Title I schools, there is, as you saw, a lot of additional dollars that flow into those schools, and there's a lot of school-based control over where those dollars go, based on what they see in their local schools.
And that's what's required, that the schools make the decision.
Yes, and and there has to be input from the staff
site,
as well.
the population.
And another term you hear with Title I is the word supplant.
Still what?
Supplant.
Oh.
Title I funds cannot be used for something that we as a district would already pay for.
Absolutely.
An example, at one time, Title I dollars paid for instructional coaches, and they were only at the Title I schools. We saw a great benefit to that, so we put them into all schools. When you put them into all schools, you can no longer use Title I funds to pay for instructional coaches. So it has to be above and beyond what we as a district would give to that school anyways.
And would there ever be an instance where you would refuse the request of a principal? I mean, when they come to you.
We
and
have
say, "This is what I
conversations with
want,"
principals about what's the best way to spend their dollars. We don't refuse. We are very persuasive.
Right. As I said, NC STAR has made a very big difference because really for an expense to be approved, they need to show in action steps in their school improvement plan how it's going to be used. So it really aligns everything. It's been a blessing. I'm a fan.
Most of the time, if we tell a school no, it's because the federal government won't allow it or it violates the plant rules.
How long has NC STAR been in effect?
We've had about 11 schools that have been using NC STAR for several years because it was the federal law that our schools that were low performing use it. That's how I got to know NC STAR and really got very attached to the good that it would create.
Suggestion? Or
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And then this past year, DPI has really encouraged that we go district-wide. And I can't tell you the exact number, but if you look at the state of North Carolina, the majority of the districts are using NC STAR district-wide. I really wish that she had stayed, and I was going to ask permission if I could just say a real quick thank you. But the legend, I think, left a little bit earlier, which is Emma Jackson, and I'm forever in her debt for everything that she has shared with me and taught with me about this position. So even though she's not here, I think it's important to say thank you.
Thank you. I have been asked to take a 5-minute break, so we will do that at this time. Thank you.